welcome to the Daily Whatever. We
Hi,
are
all.
we're getting started close to on time. We're going to try to be better about that going forward. And thanks to everybody for joining. Dana, my lovely co-host, how are you this morning?
You
Lip
know,
syncing.
I'm lip syncing, and also, I was here. I see why our guests are sometimes like I can't figure out how to join
It's frustrating.
because
So I was sitting on the live, waiting for you, and it was, it. I can't go live until you join, and so I actually
okay.
had to cancel your invitation and go live and then resend it. So yes, it's super frustrating as a guest
Oh, okay.
trying to
Sorry
join a
about
live
that,
that you've been
everybody.
invited to. It's really confusing.
It
Maybe our
is, and that I might have been part of the problem. I came in just at 7. Ooh, there was my computer monitor.
Oh
So
no, I was live. I was on several minutes before. I got on at 9:55 my time.
That's why. Okay. I was not ready 5 minutes before today. Apologies. I had goals, but I failed my goals. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
Of all the
Karen's saying
goals
the
I failed
invitation
today.
flashes quickly, and it does. It's really disconcerting how quickly it kind of pops up, and then if you miss it, it's gone.
And yeah, I was like, it said Lawrence invited you to join a um a live. Hi Karen, I see you invited. You were here at 9:55 too. Oh, 6:55. I was not there yet. But yeah, it was like Lawrence invited you to join. I'm like, great. I click it and it would send me to your profile. And I was like, yeah, I know who Lawrence is. I'm
Right.
aware.
Yeah,
But and then it popped up again. So,
something is
anyways,
not quite right in the
you
world
know,
of Substack.
I have halfway written a note for like, hey, Substack, we've been going live for a while. Here's some feature requests.
Here are things that we would really like to have.
Yeah, exactly. So, good morning. Happy Monday, everyone.
Good
Welcome to
morning.
the Daily Whatever. I'm going to toast you with my very first sip of tea of the day, the happiest moment of the day.
Here's my water. Dana, I'm afraid we're in for kind of a heavy conversation today.
I
Don't you
know.
think?
You know, yes, absolutely. And I'm wondering if we're going to come at it from two different angles because I think you're angrier and I'm just sad angrier.
Yeah, no, you're right. I can tell that you're sad and a little bit
Hmm.
angry, and I'm very, very angry. And I mean, I'm sad too, but the anger is the thing that is coming first for me, which,
And for me, I'm sad first, and the anger is second, but it's a little different. It's more like anger that we're living in the alternative timeline that we're living in that I swear started when David Bowie died back
right.
in 2016, right? Early start of
Yeah.
2016, and everything went to shit. So we're gonna get into that, but um our theme today, I was really proud of this language, Lawrence. I thought it was a good one. Although we've so do you want to go ahead and say the theme because this is kind of your big article?
Yeah, I mean, the theme is we're talking about the article that I published early this morning. I wrote it yesterday. It's Democrats, You're Doing It Wrong Again. And
Yes.
for context, I'd planned to write this article kind of based on all of the news about Biden's mental health and what we're learning and about the David Hogg situation. And as I was editing it yesterday evening, the news broke about Biden's prostate cancer diagnosis. And so I
Yeah.
really had a moment of thinking,
I was editing it yesterday evening, the news about
right.
Biden's prostate. As I finally join in. Sorry guys, let me mute first. You keep talking. I won't do
Yeah,
anything.
yeah. I honestly thought about not posting this today, to be perfectly honest, because it in a
Yeah.
way, it seems like the most ill-timed article in the world, and in another way, it seems like really good timing because I think I'll say this one thing and then I'll pause and let you give input. But I think part of what we need to learn as Democrats, as liberals, as progressives, as a party, whatever.
Oops. Sorry. I'm on my Mac today, not my PC. Uh oh, I think it's only muting on the other input. I'm gonna stay off of the chat. You man the chat.
All right, I'll man the chat. Um,
So what are the things we need to learn as Democrats?
we got to like process this. I know that we're prone to wanting to spend a lot of time unpacking and, therapizing about situations, and we just fucking can't. We don't have the time. The point of the article is that we need to absorb all of this data really quickly and make some big decisions about what our party is and what party leadership looks like, and move on and fight Trump and fight authoritarianism. Otherwise, we are just doomed. We'll have time later to unpack and figure out kind of who knew what when, and really dig into that. We don't have time right now.
We don't.
And so yeah, that's kind of the big point of the article. That's why I decided that even with the news about Biden's prostate cancer diagnosis, I thought it was important to go live with this article and to talk about it.
I 1,000% am cheering you on. Two thoughts.
I thought it was important to go live with this article.
Jesus Christ, I'm not okay. All I'm doing is going to your page to pull up the article, Lawrence. I'm on like an endless loop. I'm not even going to do that. Um, two thoughts that I hope I still remember now. One is Jesus Christ, the news is moving so fast. I mean, it's being done by design by Trump and people, right? Of like the inundation, the flood of just like shit news, so that we can never stop to process one thing, and it's just like a disaster after disaster after disaster. This one he didn't make. Oh, and it's still happening. Like you just finished this article like 12 hours, 15 hours ago, like and,
9 hours ago.
and already we're like shit, should we even run it because new news. And so that happened. And the other thing is like I think it's a very Gen X trait. I say that a lot, but it is a very Gen X trait to be like, I don't have time to wallow in this. We got shit to do. Like the time to process and argue and to focus on things that aren't the right things to focus on. I have always felt like I don't have the luxury to do that. Like you have to stay on top and keep moving or you get left behind.
Right.
And it's part of our resilience. But it's like so deeply embedded in me that even last week when all the articles started about Biden's mental capacity, I was just like, why are we talking about this right now? Because I don't really follow the mainstream news much anymore. I certainly don't ever watch it, and I'm not even following the mainstream sources as closely as I am Substack. So I saw it all bursting out on Substack, and I was like, why are people talking about all this in all detail? And I was like, oh, it's a distraction. But it never like I'm like, oh, if that happened, that sucks. But like I don't care. Like it's so in the past at this point that that story doesn't interest me at all. Yeah. Well, we're gonna get in. You have a really good part in your story where you address it and how it's wrong and how there should be consequences. But like I'm already like I don't care. I there is a far more deranged and mentally incompetent person, and the least of his problems is for me is the cognitive decline. Who's in the office? So why are we looking at the cognitive status of the dude who's no longer in office? It's so funny because Biden, to his detriment, I think, never learned to play the media.
Right.
Never learned how to toot horns and be like, we did this and it's really great, or to try to guide the messaging. He was too busy, presumably, doing the work and being a statesman, and that was sort of seen as undignified. And like fucking now, the time that we don't need or want it, he's dominating the news cycles. Like, give me a
Right.
break. Do
Yeah,
not
no, I think you're exactly right. Like the great benefit of Joe Biden and his presidency was that it was a guy who knew the system inside out and backwards because he had been in the Senate for so long.
right.
And he, brought all of that to bear in getting some really big accomplishments done during his term, but he didn't know how to spin the media or, even just play the media game at all, really. And
Right.
I probably I'm kind of assuming that maybe he downplayed that, right? That like people on his team possibly wanted to be able to play things up in the media, and he was like, "Oh no, like we don't brag," um, and all to
It
his
seems
detriment,
likely. It seems likely.
right? It's all just so unfortunate, and the timing is so shitty. And I think we should take a moment to really feel sad for him, right? This is not the way his story should end. It's sort of the nightmare scenario, right? Like, it's stage 4 cancer. He's 82 years old. We know what this means. You know,
Yeah,
it's metastasized to his bones. You know, yes, with modern medicine, he may have several years left in him, but my
yeah.
hope for him outliving the Trump presidency is not great. And that means that Trump is going to be the head of state during Biden's state funeral. And that fucking sucks because,
Lawrence, you know what? I want to pause you for 2 seconds because you're yes, this is the thing that's been haunting me since the election night. Honestly, it was one of the things. But I think we should pause and have you share the link to your story in
yeah,
the chat. And if you wouldn't mind, I think you should read part of it before we start jumping in and talking through all the parts. And while you are doing that, I will say it was literally one of my thoughts on election night was like, please let him live long enough that Trump can't eulogize him. And the other thought was, and I posted this in a note yesterday, was like, let him leave contingency plans in his will, in his whatever. That's like, not him. Obama can eulogize me, not that fucker. I don't even want him in the room. I wouldn't let him in the room if I were the Biden family.
yeah. I mean, I don't
He's
know.
dead.
State funeral at the National Cathedral. I'm not sure that you cannot invite the president, but
I
I
don't
hear
know.
your point. I mean,
Yeah.
and I agree wholeheartedly. I just, I, yeah, okay. So, oh God, I don't even know where to start. Sorry. Um,
Yeah, there's so many good parts in the story. It's hard to pick one to read. In the chat, I see that people with advanced prostate cancer can live 5 years. They can. This is just a complete hunch, Lawrence. So I have a feeling that I don't think this is a like they knew all along. I don't know enough about prostate cancer. Clearly, there's this thing called stage 5 I didn't know about. I do know from the
you're,
comparisons
you're
of breast
making a
cancer.
joke, right?
No, so we'll get into the tweet, but I was corrected, I think by Patrick, that when it comes to prostate cancer, there is a stage 5,
Oh shit.
which I
Okay,
didn't know.
I learned something.
Um, yeah, I haven't verified that or anything, but yeah, that's only with prostate cancer. And I'm realizing I don't know anything about it, but I know a lot about breast cancer because, I'm a woman, that there are some kinds that you can have for years and not know. And there's some that come on like a motherfucker on fire. And when you find out, you are stage 4. So I would imagine it's the same. I'm not going to assume that he's known for years he has it and he didn't disclose it. But I do think that he's probably at least known a few months, maybe not. And that the end is probably very near, and that's why they announced it. That's my hunch, is that we're talking weeks or months.
Oh crap. Okay.
That's my hunch. I don't know. I feel like he's been through so much shitty stuff, and um, I'm gonna guess they waited to announce it till as late as they could. That's just a vibe. It's
Yeah.
based on nothing,
Well, I trust
but
your vibes, and I think that's a really good insight. So, um, okay, here I found a place that I think I'll read from. I'm not going to read the whole thing.
right.
Um, so again, this is from my article. Democrats, you're doing it wrong again. There's no public evidence that the diagnosis occurred while he was still in office, but in the context of what we know now, the timing raises real questions. If his health was in decline during the campaign, it only strengthens the argument that he should not have run again, and that those closest to him failed him, the party, and the nation. If somehow Biden had been reelected, he'd be stepping down right now, today. Hubris, ego, and bad advice carried Biden into a campaign he shouldn't have pursued, and we're all living with the fallout. The people who enabled this decision, who closed ranks, ignored red flags, and spun fairy tales for the press, should not be leading the Democratic Party right now. They've proven they can't be trusted with power. They should never be allowed leadership in the party or any campaign ever again. Meanwhile, in our hideously real present day timeline, Trump is back in the Oval Office, and every day that Democrats focus on Biden's past instead of Trump's present, they cede ground. Here's the thing: I don't give a fuck about Joe Biden's cognitive decline at this point. I am terrified about Trump's very similar challenges and the complete lack of media interest in them. With Trump, we'd be only too lucky if his cognitive decline was the worst of our challenges, but it's not. We all know it's not. The threat of Trump and MAGA authoritarianism is not theoretical. This is fascism with a calendar. Trump lied during the campaign and said he knew nothing about Project 2025. According to the Project 2025 tracker, about 42% of the Project 2025 plan has been implemented, with more happening every day. How can we possibly afford an intra party food fight while democracy dies before our eyes? The Democratic response is still fractured, still reactive, still tangled up in blame games about what went wrong last year. We can't afford this, not now.
Big plus one, underline, very well argued, very shitty to live.
Yeah,
This reality, and it's so interesting. Again, speaking about how the news cycle changes so quickly. Like you wrote this with fire in your blood when like we just found out
yesterday,
yesterday,
yesterday.
and already it's not like our whole plan today was to talk about how the Democratic Party needs to not focus on Biden's cognitive decline, how we need to be rallying around what's important and have consistent messaging. And already I'm like, yes, and I think that his cancer diagnosis is a bigger story and something we actually do need to pause and process and talk about um, because we're multi hyphenate, we can do two things in one
Right.
show, and also because it's so fucking tragic and wrong, Lawrence. I'm indignant. This is and these are awful things to say, but they're like I don't wish death on people, but death keeps hitting the wrong people, and
Yeah.
it makes me so angry and indignant. And I mean, this is not political at all, but like 66-year-old Jill Solbuel, by all accounts, a delightful human being and pop singer, like got burned to death like what
Right.
a
In
week
a house.
ago in a house fire. Like how is that happening? And Biden, like now I know they're not related, but in my mind they are. It's like all of these. You like to think that in the end karma catches up, and in some ways your story ties up with a bow. We all, I think, sort of want that in our time frames. And I was thinking about Jimmy Carter last night and how he lived to 100, right? And he outlived his beloved wife, who he knew since the moment she was born. Like their story has a beautiful fucking narrative arc. And he was like, he was holding on to vote for the first woman president.
Right.
That's why he was holding on. And he voted for her, and the story was covered beautifully. And all you wanted was that narrative arc to be like, Jimmy, you were a much better post president than president. At least that's how you'll be remembered. But you've led a good life as a very good man. And now you get to stick the landing. You
Right.
get the ending you want. But no, he watched the worst of the worst in us. And by us, I mean America as a people,
Right.
come up and elect the very fucking worst human back.
Right. And we
And then
knew
he,
he was the very worst human because he'd been president once before. It wasn't
yeah,
like it was
there's
an
no
unknown.
question.
It was like, no, yeah, we really did the wrong thing again.
And Biden, by the same token, like here's someone who lived through great tragedy, loss of like unimaginable loss, but carried on, found love again, um, went on to have a bigger and even more beautiful family, like a statesman his whole life, like flawed, as we all are, but like I really do believe his intent has always been positive, even when misguided.
Right.
I do think ego and hubris got him. I also think he was enough of a statesman to know, I think Kamala's going to have a hard go of it. And I think he thought if he stepped back when he should have, it would have become a race, and that race would have been really hard, knowing Trump was right there. And I think I'd like to think he thought that he, being an incumbent, was in the best standing because traditionally speaking, he would have been, right? Had he
Yes,
been younger,
and I mean,
had he
friendly
been
disagreement
younger,
here.
yeah, yeah.
If he'd really believed in the power of the incumbency, he should have done the right thing and stepped down and let Kamala run as an incumbent.
Oh my
That
God,
was the right thing to do.
we predicted that would happen. At least I did, and I think you agree.
Yeah,
We
no,
both
we absolutely did. We were talking
agreed
to each other. Yes.
in 2020 that we were like, he just needs his narrative arc to contain, and I finally fucking got it. I'm president, and
Right.
2 years later, he's gonna be like, dude, I'm old. Peace out. I've trained up my successor. You may not be ready to elect your first woman president, but you're getting your first woman president.
Right. My theory was he needed to wait until the day after the halfway point of his presidency, because at that
That's
point, that would have enabled Kamala to serve out the remainder of his term and then run and win twice on her own independently. She could have been our president for 10 years if he had done the right thing and stepped down. And I'm sorry, I love Joe Biden. He's a good man.
yes.
He deserves a better ending than this.
He
If
owns some
he
of it.
and his people around him knew that he was in cognitive decline to the point that they hid and shielded, then that was actually a cover up. It was a crime. They
Yeah,
like those people should ultimately be punished. I mean, Biden obviously not. He has a much more unfortunate ending, but I'm of the belief that Democrats are supposed to be better. We're supposed to be the ones who do the right thing. You know, Bill Clinton fucking lied under oath, and I wanted him impeached because he lied under oath. And God bless the innocent time in which lying under oath about a blowjob was the worst thing that a president had ever, conceivably
right,
done, other,
right.
other than Nixon. But I want us to be better. And right now, we're not being better at all. We're kicking out David Hogg, who wants a fresh
Yes.
generation of leadership. We're debating whether Biden had the mental capacity. The cancer diagnosis notwithstanding, we're not doing the right things right now as a party, and it
You are
is
correct.
making me furious.
You're right. I mean, even in my best thought out scenario, which is that I do think he had positive intent, um, there's kind of a bigger problem, and it's still a problem with our. I mean, there's so many problems with our current president, but one of them is like we're electing people who are way too old. We are electing people with cognitive deficits, and I think I'd like to think it was lesser with Biden than with Trump, but still present, unable to confront our executive and say, "You're wrong. This needs to shift." I have to think there were people because when he was elected, he was, I know you feel the same way about this, Lawrence, that um, he was not our first choice. There were so many good candidates.
Right.
Those
I
that primary season was so fun to watch because we were all like, Team
right.
Warren, Team
Pete
Buttigieg.
Pete won the Iowa caucuses. If the
Yeah.
Democrats hadn't fucked up the Iowa caucuses, it would have been a different story. Pete had won. He would have gone into New Hampshire with momentum. Um, yeah, the whole it, it just seems more and more like the entire party apparatus is like the gang that can't shoot straight. And
Yeah.
I,
So,
how are we going to
okay,
save democracy with the Keystone Cops? I'm also
like,
fascinated that a person just joined who is not a clickable link. It's just a person joined. One
ooh,
person joined.
hello, one person. Maybe your
Hello.
username is one person. That would be
Oh,
really clever.
except it isn't because it's not clickable. I can click everybody else and go to their profile. Hello, mysterious person.
Hello. Unless you're spying on, could we just say the Pledge of Allegiance and that we love our president and all of our leaders?
I don't know. Fuck that.
I'm just kidding.
8647.
Yeah, I'm kidding. I'm like just like who is joining us who wants to not identify? I didn't know you could do that.
I didn't
Um,
either.
we learn something new about Substack every day.
Every
Um,
damn day.
but back to our topic, y- you're right. And um, if the Trump administration is doing anything, it's doing a lot, but it is making it clear how our like executive branch is. I don't want to say is too powerful because that's not fair. That's
No,
not
it
quite
is
the
too
right.
powerful.
It is
It
like
is.
that's where I'm going with this of like, wow, even under Biden, and this is me making some big assumptions and building on the assumptions that you made. Um, oh, and there goes my whole system going dark. I ordered some new technology this weekend. You'll be happy to know. And I'm going to be ordering a new monitor, but the little thing that connects them, the hub, I think has a short, and it does this.
Mm,
Super fun during work calls too. Um, but I have to think like and so I was going back to when it became clear he was going to be the nominee. We were all very grumbly because we were the whole time we were like, "Ugh, not Biden, somebody fresh, not Biden." And when it was him, I was like, okay, I really liked the messaging that the DNC as a whole came forward with, and it was very much like I am a bridge. I am,
right. A bridge to
I
the future.
yes, and I will never forget, and I will always be grateful that he was like, it's time for a woman vice president. I will not consider any but women to be my vice president. Like, no one's ever fucking done that before. So that was beautiful. And that message was beautiful. That was like one of the times that I thought the DNC really got it right of like, oh, I get it. He's going to be a bridge. Um, I have to think he had a lot of people around him who were thinking that same thought after 2 years in a day, Lawrence. Like, we're not like some like genius political schemers. I have to think people were encouraging that. I mean, Jen Psaki seems great. He had good people in his press corps.
Right.
Um, he had to have people who were like, the media is different now, Joe. We need to go after it. And that it
Right.
came probably from him of like, and at the time I appreciated it actually. It was really quiet and it was a peaceful 4 years. And if we remember his presidency for anything, that's one I have with a mark of gratitude. I assume for people on the other side of the political aisle, it was not because they were too busy screaming at their at gas pumps, which makes no sense. And Hunter Biden's laptop, which I don't fucking care. Like, just whatever. This is scandal to you know rally up a scandal. But like, it was nice to just be like, oh, the grown-ups are in charge, and we're not pandering like a bunch of like teenagers trying to I don't know, get a seat on the homecoming court, get elected, like it felt really good. I even understand why he maybe wanted to lead that way. But I think we're kind of over that line now. You just can't lead that way.
Right.
And I have to think he was guided and chose not to. And um, I see some wisdom in that. I'm certain he was strongly encouraged, if not to step down midterm, to not run again. And that's where it crossed the line into unforgivable hubris
Right.
and ego.
Yeah, I agree. Like I get maybe not stepping down in the middle of your term, right? But the idea about running for reelection, especially if as all this reporting that is coming out is true, which it very much seems to be, if he was experiencing cognitive issues in 2023, right? He had plenty of time. There was plenty of time for him to
Yeah.
say, you know what, gosh, I can't run for reelection. And they didn't need to say, like, I can't run for reelection because, I'm experiencing cognitive issues. That obviously would
No.
have been a bad play. But he could have just legitimately said, I want to spend more time with Jill, right? I want to spend more time with my grandkids and my great
And
grandkids.
yeah, I'm a bridge. I mean, it went with the same messaging, right?
Right,
It was just like, it's time to step aside to the Democrats of the future. And honestly, though, that had to start day one of his term. So here's a total conjecture. Lawrence, I want to hear what you think. Let's pretend it's Sunday morning because I think they're bloviating at least almost as much as we're going to have to be to answer this next question. Why do you think Biden never elevated Harris during their term? Like, she was kind of invisible as a vice president, and she was historic. She's brilliant. Like, we saw her campaign. She's great in front of a microphone. Sometimes, sometimes more challenged, but like certainly made fewer gaffes than he did. And he was in front of a microphone a lot during the O'Biden administration. So the O'Biden. my God, did I just say, oh, Biden? Why did no one say that before? The Obama administration,
They did.
they did. I just missed it. See, I didn't
Yeah,
watch the news that much. But during the Obama administration, people knew Joe. I mean, there were memes. They actually became a meme, right? They were funny together.
right,
Why was like there should have been an expert storyteller there
right. Yeah,
making this bridge.
I mean, I have a really strong hunch, and
Yeah,
my
let's
hunch
hear.
is that the people who surrounded Biden,
Yeah.
I don't know all their names, but like Ron Klain and Anita Dunn, there are two more guys whose names I can never remember who were part of his like sacred inner council. I think they didn't want that. They wanted to stay in power as long as possible, right? For a lot of them, this was also their I'm finally like in the White House. I'm finally serving my president and the
Mm,
guy that I've been rooting for forever. I don't want to be out of power after 2 years. I don't want to, not run for reelection. And I think they didn't want to elevate Kamala because they saw her as a threat, right? Because they
yeah,
were doing the whole thing that I'm trying to express in this article is that we don't have time for inter-party fights. Like we should spend this one day processing the grief and the anger and everything about Biden's health, mental, physical, the prostate cancer, everything, and then get back to fucking work.
yeah.
And we have to learn the lesson that it's time for the silent and boomer generations to stand down. It just is.
It just
You're
is.
done. You're staying on too long. We're Gen X. We're probably never going to have a chance to really rise to power, inside in national politics because boomers and silent folks have been hanging on to power
Yeah.
for too long. And you know what? That's fine. Show me the millennials like Pete Buttigieg and AOC and um, Jasmine Crockett and the other folks that I can get
Yeah.
behind and elevate. We need new people in power in the Democratic Party, in the country for sure, but in the party, absolutely.
And I will say
And
with one caveat, stick around and mentor. Build the
right.
bridge.
I mean,
Build the bridges because the older folks vote.
right. Absolutely. I mean, you know, say what you want about Nancy Pelosi. She did at least have the grace to stand down as speaker and elevate Hakeem Jeffries. And she literally said, I'm sticking around so that I can mentor him through his first speakership. Well, what they hoped was going to be his first speakership.
Yeah.
And, and that's great. That's what people should be doing.
That's what people, I mean, Bernie Sanders is doing it. I know we both have the things we like and don't like about Bernie, but like he brought AOC on the road with him, like
Yeah.
maybe for his own gain, but I think I think he's doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing. He's like, this is the heir apparent to my ethos, and I'm going to elevate her with everything I've got, and like do that, do that, old folks.
Yeah.
But from the background or second billing,
Right.
or co-billing at the beginning if you think for some reason you're elevating someone who doesn't quite have the stature yet. Um, yeah,
Or,
Kamala would have been our first Gen X president,
yeah,
right? Yeah. Um,
barely, I think.
but yeah, she's like a Generation Jones, I think. She might be like just barely. I think she's like a 64, 63, 64.
Yeah.
I would have counted her. She's got Gen X all over her. She's very Gen Xy. And I will say, we talked about like during the campaign. I'm just going to briefly go to the past because we're having a day like that. I saw in her campaign um, everything I wanted to see that was kind of different and like so much innovation, such a what was so remarkable to me, and I know we've talked about this, Lawrence, was she had no fucking time, right? They had to do very limited. They didn't have time to research. They didn't have time to craft the perfect what's going to hit the right demographic. They had to take their best guess, right? And boom, go with it, everything they've got. I loved that they leaned into joy. I loved that they went so hard into social media in ways that were biting and funny, but really smart.
Yeah.
Like, I still think about that DNC that was like, I think about the roll call and how they let every state come forward with these ridiculous, some of them not ridiculous, but these like joyous, over the top songs and bombast. And the contrast of that to the RNC. And I was like, oh my god, she's going to take this all the way because um she took action so quickly. She did what Gen X Gen X people do, and what women and Black women do is like, you got to lead, you got to do it fast, and you just go. And I don't know if she could have won if she had had a year and a half to plan and they crafted it. Like now, in retrospect, it's like the messaging was wrong and blah blah blah. I think she just had cards stacked against her, and a country that was really fatigued by some things that were accurate and some that were not being accurately blamed on her administration.
Yeah,
But it was so amazing to see a fresh, even though she was not fresh, she's been around, but it was a totally fresh voice because
right.
she
And a fresh
wasn't
vibe.
empowered to be, or she wasn't allowed to be much of anything during her vice presidency. And even when she ran the first time, it was far more staid. When it was finally her at the top of the ticket, she was like, "Girl, bring it." And I loved every minute of it. And I'm still fucking grieving that we don't get to see that leadership in action.
Yeah. Karen says Kamala was born in 64. So she
Yeah.
was the year right before. We're,
Generation Jones. Yeah.
yeah, we're grandfathering her in, you
Yeah.
know.
She's Gen X. She is not a boomer.
She absolutely presents as Gen X. Yeah,
That
for sure.
woman has pivoted and shifted and been resilient and like and dynamic, and she's keeping up with what younger generations are doing it her own way, like marrying late in life, chose not to have kids. Like that is a Gen Xer,
Yeah.
right? Um, so, anyways, I don't want to spend too much time talking about Kamala, but if we're having a grief episode, I do just want to acknowledge what could have been, and that goes into your anger, right?
Yeah. I mean, it plays right into my anger. You know, I think that if he had been thinking logically and if he had had better advisors, he would have had multiple contingency plans into place and they would have just been evidence and data based, right? Like they would have been, okay, well, if I get this diagnosis or if I'm feeling this particular way, that means I'm not really up for it. And let's do plan B or plan C or plan X, you know, whatever.
Right.
The idea that there really was kind of you know, like I'm always kind of thinking in terms of like project management. There's a critical path, and if an obstacle gets in your way, you shift the critical path. And
Hmm.
sometimes it might mean that you have to redo everything, or it might mean that the thing that seemed absolutely inconceivable at the beginning
Yeah.
is actually your only clear way forward. And I'm
Yeah.
disappointed because I think what was happening is they were burning so much energy inside that White House trying to figure out how to cover up his cognitive decline that they weren't thinking about kind of facts on the ground and the very real what if Trump got reelected. And you know, I remember at the time that the election happened and Trump got reelected. Of course, I was horrified. We all were. But I at that time took a little bit of solace in like, okay, well, but the Biden administration has surely put multiple contingency plans into place and they've gamed it out and thought it through. You know what? Now I'm not so sure that they did. I think that they were so fucking consumed in concealing this giant secret that we got what we got, and there is no backup plan. There is no
Right. I
secret
remember you were like,
contingency.
he's going to, take advantage of his newly like Supreme Court mandated power and do XYZ. He didn't do any of it on the way out. He was very quiet on the way out, which I get, but also wasn't great for us. Lawrence, what I love that you went into full program manager mode of and I'm going to add a mechanism to your plan, which is uh cognitive evaluations. We need cognitive, like I suspect, we've all worked for that manager who you can't say no to
Right,
at every level. And this is the president. We're dealing with it right now, of course. Like anyone who says no gets fired. But so there should be a mechanism that lives outside of that. And that is this is so hard, but an unbiased medical opinion. And it probably needs to be like each political side has to pick several doctors to come in and be the neutral forces to say cognitive evaluation as part of them, and a hardcore one because like
right.
you can't be like, well, grandpa's still doing pretty well. You probably don't need a home for him. Like, I'm just thinking about this in terms of like my father, who is in a memory care and is the same age as Trump and Biden. And he did not go willingly in,
Right.
but boy, he needs to be there. And I don't think either, obviously neither Biden nor Trump are where my father is, but um, how can we feel as we keep electing these, like, you know, octogenarians or close to it, like, how can we feel assured that that's not happening when the office of the president has such power now that, especially right now, if you disagree with him, you're out. So there's nobody who's going to challenge, like, but Mr. President, you just defined the term grocery to a foreign leader.
Right.
People know what groceries are,
Right.
and
You
the
may not,
prices.
but other people do. Yeah,
You're saying
here,
crazy things.
so I think what we have clearly learned from Trump, if we have the opportunity to ever right things, is guardrails guardrails that are based on tradition and good intent are worthless. Those are got
Yes.
smashed immediately under Trump.
Yeah.
We need
Isn't that
actual.
wild? Pause there, because we talked about that before of like our 249-year-old democracy is really kind of based on like a gentleman's code of conduct, so to speak, gentlewomen's.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And
no,
he just came in like bing and knocked it all down.
yeah, he essentially said that doesn't matter to me. I just don't care. I have no shame. And so all
Yeah.
those guardrails were gone. And so we need legislation. We need to seriously rethink everything about the way this democracy functions. And within the
Yeah.
constraints of the Constitution and amending it if needs be, we need to expand the court. We need to, have term limits on Supreme Court justices. They need to have an absolute code of conduct that would allow them to be easily impeached if they, you know, err on it egregiously. And the same thing for the presidency. So I was watching Morning Joe this morning before we got on this call, which I don't always do because they kind of annoy me at this stage. But they were
My
saying
mom
like,
loves that show.
don't you think? Well, it's also on crazy. Like it starts at 4 a.m. for you, so
Yeah.
um, but they were speculating. They were like, well, gosh, if he was running for reelection, don't you think it would have been more urgent for him to have a PSA test, the prostate antigen protein test. And because that's not super reliable, shouldn't he have had a physical that included a digital prostate exam? Couldn't they have caught it at that point? And all of that is part of the gentleman's agreement, right? All of that is, you would
Hmm.
assume that people of good intent are going to do things like that. I'm an 81, almost 82-year-old president running for reelection. I should submit to a full and thorough physical so that America can feel comfortable. Well, they didn't do that, right? Because they knew that it would have uncovered cognitive decline and it would have doomed his chances. And because they didn't do that, they probably missed the chance to diagnose his prostate cancer earlier. And so that just brings me back to my overarching anger about the whole thing. Joe Biden deserves a better ending. And partly he's complicit in the fact that they
He's
didn't
Icarus.
catch you know, this prostate cancer diagnosis earlier,
Yeah.
because I'm pretty sure all of them were overtly, covertly, intentionally or by sort of silent agreement going along with the fact that they knew that there were cognitive issues and they didn't want to push too hard or dig too deep. And that fucking sucks.
Yes, he's Icarus. I mean, I didn't.
Right,
What it's like I said earlier. It just karma's hitting the wrong person,
right,
because what he's done is, and we as humans, I think, like to believe that the universe is fair and karma strikes the right people, and is the fact that it's hitting him indicative that, like, are we the ones in the wrong? Everything's going well for the other side. And I'm going to just remind everyone, myself included, that like the universe is indifferent to all of us.
right.
That like there is no
Fortune
sense.
presents gifts not according to the book.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. But
Ted
you're
can dance,
right.
baby.
Yeah. I love it.
Fortune presents gifts not according to the book.
Oh, that's I love that you're dragging Dead Can Dance is like such a Gen X band. I love that you're dragging that out. That's beautiful. Um, Suddenly I'm whirling in a darkened dance club instead of
Right.
thinking about the demise of our democracy. But like, um, and really, I don't want to talk about this past today. We're right back on like, fuck everything Trump is doing, and we're going to stay focused. But as a chance to mourn, like, it's Icarus. He at the in the end, like a very well played, well lived life and leadership that should be remembered mostly for the good, right? And it won't be, because in the end he didn't know when to stop believing in his own power of flight. He didn't know when to come back down.
Right.
And so he flew too close to the sun and his wax wings melted, right? This is
Yeah.
the Greeks told us all about this. Um this is his trajectory, and that makes me very sad. He's like the kind of man I would like to think would like die with peace in his heart. And instead, like, yeah, he's gonna be fucking eulogized by a monster with no empathy, whose own son. Can we talk about the tweet now? And I will always dead name that website.
Sure.
Uh, but I think most of you have probably seen that that Junior first posted a a like, we're sorry, blah blah, for his medical condition. But then he tweeted out about how shouldn't Dr. Jill Biden have been aware of stage 5 metastatic cancer, which, like, there should be a contest for how many problematic things one can insert into so few characters. Um, and of course, the misogyny in that one is just rampant. Like, this is, I mean, from the start, Republicans always had such a huge problem with her doctorate. The fact that they had to call her a doctor, and this making fun of her for not being a medical doctor thing, and the intentional omission, like that was how they started their time in office. And it was gross at the time, but doing it while her husband has received such a fatal diagnosis, like, that's gross. She's a doctorate. Y'all need to get over yourselves and stop pretending you don't know what a doctorate is. So
Right.
people have written back to me for posting that, like, oh, they just don't know the difference between a medical doctor and other doctorates. I'm like, no, they know. They don't do this to men.
Right.
They did this to her. It's misogyny. They don't like calling her a doctor. But to then, like, there's like a gross sexual overtone in there too, of like, how could she have not noticed?
Right.
And an implication, to me, if you read, I mean, I'm sure it's not, he didn't craft it like this, right? But the way it comes out has a um, accusatory tone about aspects of their sexual life, right? That's just like, that nausea. I'm out of words for how nauseating
Right.
everything about that tweet is. So let's just assume it's like the fucking motherfucking grossest, most nauseating, despicable thing you could do upon the announcement of a former president's critical diagnosis, to
Right.
insult his wife at every level. And then I mistakenly said it's not stage 5. There's no such thing as stage 5 cancer. So apologies. I'll rescind that part. Although uh, commonly most cancers only go to 4. Um, did you know that you didn't know? We talked about this at the beginning. You didn't know prostate went to 5, did you?
No, I had no
Yeah,
idea. Honestly,
yeah.
yeah, I did not know.
I didn't
I
either.
In the initial announcement, I saw something about there being a scale, a different scale.
Yeah,
Uh,
like 1 to 10.
yeah, like 0 to 9 or something,
Mhm.
and that this was a 5, I think, or I don't know. It was maybe it was higher. I remember seeing that and being like, oh, I literally never heard of this scale before. And
Oh,
yeah, and then when I saw people were saying that it was stage 5, I was like, Jesus Christ, there's only 4 stages. So
yeah,
we're learning things, right? Like I didn't know that prostate cancer went to stage 5. But the moment that I read that it had metastasized to his bones, like an aware enough human. I have
yeah,
you know, over my life, heard enough about cancer and its progression that like metastasis is bad and to the
yeah.
bones is extra super bad.
Yeah,
And so I was not surprised to hear
good.
that it was stage 4, and now learning that it is in fact actually stage 5, which can happen with prostate cancer.
Yes. A
It's
quick Google search. Yeah, cancer that metastasizes is a 4, and that's the highest. And that's the first thing it pulls up when you look up prostate cancer staging. It's 1 to 4. Some stages are further split. I saw the same thing of it, that there's like a range of 10, and then it gets divided into 2 so that 5 is the top decile. That's not decile. It's the top level, we'll just say.
Yeah.
But I'm not. Oh, let's look at John Hopkins, a place that our government has decided to start defunding. Are there 5? No, it's even that's still showing 4. Oh wait, here maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. I I'm not seeing the 5 on the John Hopkins website, but whatever. In any event, everything about the tweet is despicable. Fuck that guy. I just it makes me angry. This is like one of the main things. I can't even say the main things. Just one of the many atrocities of this current administration is how it's lowering the level of human decency and and just the sense of propriety we should have as a people, as a culture. Like uh, it's it's gross, and I can already hear people being like, Dems do it too, because yeah, surely we've said terrible things about Trump, but we don't do it to the same level. And it's a race to the bottom that they're leading, and
Right.
some of us are following for sure. But to it's different when someone like you or me is like, fuck that guy, than when someone in office or his son and namesake says it. It's different.
Right.
Like, even if that's what you say to your peers, Donald Trump Jr., that's fine. Let your rage out. But like, what you say in public carries so much weight. Our kids are watching, and like all of us are watching this and learning that that's okay. And I'd like to think we're kinder than that at some level. We have more respect for one another. And I mean, they don't. Like, I lost that illusion a long time ago, but just watching it happen again and again is gross. Someone wrote back to my tweet, like, yeah, he's an idiot and a monster, but surely this is fake. Are you sure this is real? And I'm
No,
like,
I know. I honestly, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, that's probably fake, right? Like it's so
mm-mm,
egregiously bad, it's probably fake. And yeah, it's not. They're just
they're not.
fucking assholes.
They're just fucking assholes.
And if a
Lawrence, print a
Democrat had done
t-shirt.
it, if it was reversed,
Oh my gosh.
if a Democrat had done something like that, people in the people in the party, other progressives, liberals, whatever, would have scolded whoever had done it, right? And
Right.
that's not happening on the right. Like, if anything, I'm sure the MAGA hats are going, crazy laughing at it. And
No, this is what feeds their base. They're
right,
like,
this is what fires them up. It's revenge. It's all revenge porn to them, you
it's
know?
all just it's all just about, yeah, getting the libs all fired up. And it's like, but it impacts all of us, you guys. You just, we, I hate it. Anyways, I know we're at our last 5 minutes, and what do we do now? I mean, other than not talk about this anymore, because after today, I mean, we
Right.
will,
We
when,
will talk about it, of course. But my contention continues to be that we are focused on if we are focused on anything in the past, and if we are focused on anything Biden, like God bless, wish him well, all of those things, and like you said earlier, we have to be able to do two things at once, right? We're smart people. We can do two things at
mhm,
once. We can grieve Joe Biden's diagnosis. We can be angry that they hid his mental decline in the last year. And we can suck it up and get to work.
yeah,
And we have to do that. We have to, I'm sorry, but Chuck Schumer and, the old guard of the Democratic Party, all of those people are being radically ineffective right now.
get
And
the fuck
we
out.
we need them to get the fuck out. Like, honestly. And David Hogg's giant crime was advocating basically that any incumbent who was just a seat warmer, who, was not actively pushing against the Trump administration and leading for things like gun control and climate change, all of those people should be challenged. They should be primaried. They should have to
Mhm.
defend their right to be in Congress or the Senate. And, you know, we
Right.
have to focus on that. That has to be the thing we're focusing on right now.
We need fighters.
We need fighters. Yes, absolutely.
And
And
yeah.
God, I don't want to be gross and we need street fighters, right? We need people who don't show up to a gunfight with a sternly worded letter. We need people who are actually going to get out there and, stand up like Cory Booker did and filibuster, or get out into the districts like Tim Walz and AOC and Bernie are doing. Like, we just need people to fucking fight in every way that we can think of. And the more
I
time
would
we spend on the
yeah.
past, the less time we spend on the present and the future.
I would get behind a Cory Booker or a Tim Walz presidency run in a fucking heartbeat. I liked Cory Booker back when he was, primarying against Biden. I he's never quite caught fire. I almost wonder because there's too much comparison to Biden. Jesus, what's my namesake to Obama, that they're like, oh, another tall mixed race, about the same age, and same similar policied sort of man, but not quite as charismatic.
Right.
But I think we should like. Who cares? I think he's great. I really like him and Gen X. So maybe we'll get our president one of these days, anyhow. But um, we're a little early to be talking about that. I guess there's
Right.
too
There's
much
so
other
much
work to
that
be
we
done.
need to do right now. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, there is, and it's 7:59. So we should probably wind this down and
Yeah.
say, should we do a little preview of the week? We've got some really cool topics and some fun guests coming in. We're leaving some space, you'll notice, because Lawrence and I found we missed just talking to each other too. And we had enough topics to talk about that we're like, we're going to talk the whole hour. So we have half the week with just us and half the week with some amazing guests.
Yeah. So
Tomorrow,
tomorrow,
Patrick.
Patrick
We're
Stewart
talk-
is joining us to talk about leaving Medium. He had a big announcement that he made about, we kind of broke the news here.
we did.
Yeah, talking with us. He found out, he discovered that Medium had started blocking full email addresses from export, which meant that you didn't, nobody owns their email list on Medium anymore.
Well, they
And
don't know, to be fair, they don't, they still have what they had before, but go move
okay,
anyone moving forward.
yeah, um, but it
But it's
inspired him
bad.
to leave, right?
Yeah.
And so we're going to be talking to him about that. And then
About that
Wednesday we're
and
talking to you.
yeah, talking to me. We're talking to me.
Hmm.
Oh, about a story that will go live tomorrow. And it is related to pink hair and pronouns, my publication for parenting trans and non-binary, gender non-conforming kids. So that story will go live on Tuesday, and we will talk about it on Wednesday. But it's a conversation you're very much going to be a part of too, Lawrence. It's not. We'll talk about my story like we did about yours
I'm
today.
going to sit here quietly the entire time.
Just let me go. And then Thursday we have Untrickled. We've got Michelle Tejo. I think that's how we say her last
Hmm.
name. Who was supposed to join us last Thursday, but whose dog got injured. So she's coming back this Thursday to
Yeah,
talk
and we'll
about.
be forming the vengeance posse for Mr. Joe, because while they were x-raying his leg, they found a bullet. Someone had shot Mr. Joe ages and ages ago.
I'm
And
sorry, it's not
I
funny, but
volunteered to be part of the posse to go exact justice on whatever asshole shot a fucking dog.
right, completely with you. And also, you started talking about Joe and pellets and legs, and I thought you were talking about Joe Biden, and I just got really confused. This is what happens to me this early in the day. But yeah, her poor puppy had been shot in the past, and like, yeah, that just people are monsters, Lawrence. Same guy
Yeah,
probably voted for Trump. Um, sorry, that's not funny, sort of funny. But
right.
we're going to talk to Michelle about her dog's recovery and also about frugality in these fucked up times. And Friday, of course, carrying that along is Fucked Up Friday.
Fuck up Friday.
And our dear friend Jonathan Small from Small Talk is coming to join us
Very
again.
excited about
I'm
that. Yes.
very excited about that. Um, and then
Saturday is our
Sunday,
AMA or
that's
AUA, Ask Us Anything,
Awa. How would you pronounce?
AWA.
Yeah, I like that.
Hmm.
It's our Awa. Let's just. I'm sure somebody's coined that before, but
I'm
think of
sure.
questions you want to ask us. Nothing is off the table.
Yeah. Sunday the 25th, programming note, we are taking the day off on Sunday the 25th because it is US Memorial Day weekend that weekend. We will also be off on Monday the 26th, actual Memorial Day. So um, we're warning you a week in advance. You're going to have
Yeah,
2 days on Sunday and Monday without the daily
two.
whatever. Yeah.
And they
uh,
say Americans don't take breaks, but
right, right. Oh no, Robin and Karen, we're sorry, but also not sorry. It'll be nice to have 2 days off. Um,
I'm gonna sleep in, you guys. It's gonna be
yeah,
amazing. But I'm gonna
and
miss
yeah,
you.
and then we're already getting a great lineup for the week
The next,
after, which is very exciting.
yes, and we can say one of them because he announced it. I saw that the following fucked up Friday, it's gonna be Mr. Troy
Troy Ford.
Ford. I was like, my mind just went to Tom Ford, and I was like, so Troy Ford? No, that's not right. You're conflating. It is Troy Ford, Mr. Troy Ford. Sorry, I can't think this early in the morning, but he's going to be joining us, and he's got a book. There's my monitor again. He's got a book coming out right after, so It'll be fucked up Friday. We're also going to talk a bit about his book. Um, Future's so bright, we got to wear shades.
Right. Yes.
Hashtag Gen
Anyway,
X
thanks
reference.
for joining us, everybody. We know it was kind of a heavy one today, but we appreciate being able to chat with you fine people, and we love you. Mean it.
Love you, mean it.
Bye.
Bye.
Mwah.